all for coming out. As we open today's 2023 Fall Keynote Lecture in Global Black Studies, I begin by acknowledging that the main campus of Clemson University occupies the traditional and ancestral land of the Cherokee people. We acknowledge the histories of violence, recognize Indigenous and Black claims to life and land, and work to recenter those claims as we commit to better ways of caring for each other and for this land. As scholars of global Black studies, we honor and thank our ancestors for those whose paths allowed us to be here. We strive to make them proud and build on their legacy. Thank you for joining me in that acknowledgement and for joining us this evening for Global Black Studies Fall Keynote event, Hip Hop's Evolution Through 50 Years of Rhymes, Rhythm, and Revolution, featuring our new colleague, Dr. Melvin Villaver. Global Black Studies is a major and minor born of student demand. We are always looking for new students, so I've had folks sign up on the sheet outside. Welcome to take another sign in if you didn't get to do it before. But please sign in so we can keep in touch with you and let you know about activities that we have going on. We have a study abroad to Cuba this summer, and I see several of our faculty with new courses coming up in the spring, so keep an eye out. Folks, put your hands up. Professors in Global Black Studies. Okay, these are people that are teaching our classes: theater, sociology, history, language, all kinds of folks in here. So if you're interested in our courses, we're everywhere. Dr. Villaver received his Ph.D. in American Studies from Purdue University this past summer and is now a jointly appointed assistant professor of audio technology in the Department of Performing Arts and Global Black Studies in the Interdisciplinary Studies Department. His research focuses on the global reach of Black musics in the form of conjoined twins from the Philippines who toured as jazz musicians in the early 20th century. As a hip hop artist and scholar, he gives voice to their lives using his background in blues epistemology and music production. Likewise, he links his Filipino heritage to the global Black art form of hip hop with words and sounds that will have you bobbing your head. You can check him out yourself at Melvin Earl Music, all one word. But before you do that, let's welcome him here tonight for see what flow he has for us tonight. Teach us, Dr.
Thank you. Hello, friends, colleagues, extended Clemson University community, and to folks who represent the community of Clemson Central. I see Greenville in the house. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me, and thank you, Kaifa, for that wonderful introduction. Again, my name is Melvin Villaver, and today I have the privilege and the honor of talking about 50 years of hip-hop, hip-hop's evolution, 50 years of rhymes, rhythms, and revolution. And what we're here today to talk about in this keynote lecture, we are celebrating what is documented and recorded as the 50th anniversary of hip hop, which is August 11th, 1973. It is dated. It has been postmarked and checked, right? Folks know about this date because this history has been documented, and the people who are around at that era are still alive and able to tell this story. And we're going to chronicle this story. There is no way by any means I'm going to be able to cover the entire spectrum of 50 years of hip hop within an hour or so, but I'm going to do my best to give it justice. And using my training, I'm also going to spend some time talking about the revolutionary politics of hip hop as global Black praxis, or as Afro-diasporic, Afrocentric praxis. And I'm also going to talk about the revolutionary innovations that hip hop has made to audio technology. And so without further ado, let's jump into it. So this is a clip from one of my favorite movies. It's called Brown Sugar. Raise your hand if you've seen it before. Beautiful. And this is something, if you are in the field of hip hop or you love hip hop, oftentimes what comes up in discourse and in conversation between people is, when did you first encounter hip hop, or when did you first fall in love with hip hop? So let's take a second to watch this clip. And I want you to think about this question because I'm going to ask you all this question again later.
So, when you fall in love with hip hop? I basically fell in love with hip hop, you know what I'm saying? When cats first started going out to the parks, you know, with the two turntables, the mic. I think it was 1977. People are rocking in the parks. I can remember back in the Bronx, 1979. Set up some turntables in front of the building. We was getting the power from the street lamps outside. Plug it up into the street code. MCing, DJing, B-boying, breakdancing. Breakdancing, popping beats. Vibes, you know. I was in love with it.
I was about 12 years old, man. I was watching Wild Style. Creative, it was new, it was fresh, breaking, rapping, battling, just the whole culture period.
Bam by the show, after his mom's show, it was just like our way of expression.
Hip hop spoke directly to me because, you know, it was speaking from a language that people I was able to speak.
And I loved it as soon as I got introduced to it.
I was going to deal with hip hop what I wanted to announce. I was forced marriage to speak church.
I heard he's the president, and that kind of changed my life.
I heard the message.
Nothing there. It was about when Eddie Cheatham was one of the pioneers. My first video game.
Rappers for life.
Rappers for life. That set it off for rap music. 1 4 plus 1 more. Plus 1 more. You know what I'm saying? Furious 5, Freedom. One of them. Houdini freestyle. Sucker MCs by Run DMC. Sucker MCs live. Grandmaster Flash on the wheels of skill. Grandmaster Cash on the Kool Herc brothers. Cold Crush, Grandmaster Flash, Treacherous 3, Body Rock, Spoonie G, Love Rap. The first time I heard Rebel got fought. Everything rocking. Hey, EPMD them. I gotta say, Public Enemy in the group. You know, classic, famous. I mean, to this day, they famous. I just love what it sounded like. I love what he was saying, you know, the whole slick talk thing. I felt like these dudes is the truth. Forget everything else you heard on the radio and all that. This is it. This is what I want to do.
Oh, man.
It was freedom.
You hear Questlove at the end say it was freedom. So let's understand hip hop. What is it, right? Well, I want to set the foundation for us thinking about hip hop as Afro-diasporic and Afrocentric practice. It's deeply rooted in Afrocentric practices. For those of you who study Africana studies, you might have heard about the griot, which is the leader of the village, right? And over drums played by representatives of the village, the griot greets the African village. Let's say a marriage is happening or a baby's being born. He's the teller of the stories of the village. And these practices are centuries old, millennia old, if you will. And the roots of the roots of hip hop are founded in that. It's rooted in cultural expression. Hip hop is born like a phoenix from the ashes due to socioeconomic and political failure by the American nation state, specifically in New York City, but it was relevant to folks all across the United States. And because of this failure, this governmental failure, you had Black and brown, African American, and Afro-Caribbean youth longing for a way to express themselves, being left without a voice and without the mediums or the tools to express themselves. Hip hop becomes this innovation and this invention that Black and brown, African American, Afro-Caribbean youth use to take power back and to express themselves. It is an inclusive cultural movement. So even though its roots are Afrocentric and Black American very much so, anyone can participate. Hip hop is participatory, it's active, and it encourages people to take part in the cipher, to join in. Also call and response antiphonous, much like Afro-diasporic practices, right? It asks people to join. You know, if I say, you know, where my fellas at, right? Say, hey. Hey. Where my ladies at? Say, hey. Right? It's antiphonous. Call and response is a fundamental part of hip hop. And it's a powerful sense of storytelling, activism, and community building. And it's global now, right? It transcends geographical boundaries. So as I dive deeper into this too, I want to talk about hip hop's nomenclature, the name behind it. Here's this quote from KRS-One, pioneering MC. MC stands for microphone controller or move the crowd, right? Also known as a rapper. But KRS-One says, hip is to know. It's a form of intelligence. To be hip is to be updated and relevant. Hop is a form of movement. You can't just observe a hop. You got to hop up and do it. Hip and hop are more than music. Hip is the knowledge. Hop is the movement. So therefore, hip and hop together is intelligent movement. And I want to place emphasis on the spelling. Hip hop is 2 words. Capitalized. You're going to see it spelled all different types of ways, lowercase, maybe a hyphen or a dash between the two. But There's some pretty excellent scholarship that's taking place by hip hop scholars, as well as just how this word has been written by practitioners of the culture for the last 50 years. I want to emphasize today that if you're going to spell hip hop moving forward, because of this definition by KRS-One, it's two words, hip and hop capitalized. Is that clear, folks? All right, cool. let's yeah. Yeah, I know. They published an article on me and it was like lowercase hip hop with the dash. No, we're moving forward. We're going capital with two words, all right? Because hip hop is a culture, so it deserves the proper noun treatment. There are four fundamental elements of hip hop. The first, the foundational element, is DJing. We're going to talk a lot about DJing today, as you've seen before. I'm pretty sure cultural references you've seen before. Folks working on a turntable, also known as a record player. The word turntablism is a hip hop invention. You're going to learn that hip hop as a culture takes words and reinvents them, remixes them, if you will. Maybe takes a letter off and replaces it with an N and an apostrophe, right? But the idea is that DJing is the foundational pillar of hip hop, because without the break beats, we have nothing. Okay, MCing, right? Move the crowd, also known as microphone controller. That is originating as poetry, now synonymous with rapping. And this was the medium that provided that inner city youth, those inner city youth that I'm talking about, with a form and a mode of expression, giving voice to the voiceless, if you will. And it remains the most visible and influential pillar of hip hop to this day. We have breakdancing, another pillar that has since died down, but it's such a beautiful craft and a beautiful art form if you're able to see it. A prominent feature in hip hop videos and culture, diverse styles, the B-boys and the B-girls who invented how to move your body in such a way, transformed the way we look at dance. It revolutionized the way we looked at the movement of bodies. And graffiti, another form of moving lines, if you will, the integral pillar to hip hop's visual aesthetic, where folks would take words. For example, the youth would write their name in block lettering and large graffiti paint, colored graffiti paint, and paint the sides of trains so that their name could move throughout New York City and their name could be plastered throughout the city and you could see them, right? Again, giving voice to the voiceless. And movement is such a huge part of how the calligraphy of graffiti writing is woven in. And also this endures in hip hop fashion to this day. To those of you who like Virgil Abloh, rest in peace, Off-White, Pharrell, and what he's doing as the head of men's fashion at Louis Vuitton, implementing hip hop graffiti style in the way that fashion is being approached today. Also, you'll see it in art galleries. You'll see it in sneakers. I see people with fly sneakers on today. Huge element of hip hop culture as well. So graffiti is a huge part of the visual essence of rap music. Let's hear the teacher, KRS-One, tell us about the four core elements of hip hop.
When you look at breaking, MCing, graffiti art, DJing, the core four elements of hip hop, these are also human skills. Breaking is dance. Dance is at the beginning of human consciousness. MCing, rhythmically speaking in spoken word, the beginning of human consciousness. Graffiti art, the oldest form of human calligraphy, is still called graffiti art to this day. DJing. Our DJing is not technology or the turntable itself. It's what human beings do to technology that we call cutting, mixing, and scratching. And keep in mind, scratching, okay, there's no G on that. The scratching is a new word in the English language. Cutting is not cutting. It's specifically applied to what we do to phonograph records, CDs, and other recorded material. So hip hop lasts, or has lasted for so long, because first of all, it's embedded in the human psyche and biology. In fact, I don't even think you can be human without hip hop, because everyone has an urge to do art, dance, sing, speak, manipulate the environment around them. This is human consciousness.
So in addition to the four pillars of hip hop, there are also four principles of hip hop as outlined by hip hop pioneer, MC, and DJ Africa Bambaataa, famous for Planet Rock, but you also might know him for this record, Peace, Unity, Love, and Having Fun. I'm gonna play a snippet of it for you here. what is important about these 4 core principles of hip hop, in addition to the pillars is how you enact these 4 principles, right? And it's important because the message gets skewed when you involve market capitalism, the record industry. All of a sudden you think that anybody making a rap song is a thug or a gangster, right? And we got to be careful about how we use that type of terminology. But the origins of this culture literally comes from children in the park, just trying to spread peace, love, unity, and having fun. And this idea of these ideas of these principles come about because of that economic infrastructure of failure that I talked about earlier. The response to lack of community programs, lack of sports programs, lack of money in their neighborhoods, the response to gangs and drugs was this revolutionary movement where it was Black and brown children literally looking for ways to express themselves. And how did they do that? By standing on the principles of peace, unity, love, and having fun. I think the most important part of this, outside of all of the functioning pieces of peace, love, unity, and having fun, is that there's a highlight of joy embedded in this culture. Hip hop is meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be shared in community, and it's meant to be enjoyed, specifically Black joy. All right, so I talked a little bit about economic infrastructure and failure. The Cross Bronx Expressway was thought of as urban renewal by New York City planners in the 1940s. It was erected in the 1950s and finished built in the 1960s, late 1960s. But essentially, it's that red strip that you see moving from West Bronx to East Bronx, and it separates the North Bronx from the South Bronx. Hip hop has a proud lineage in the South Bronx, and that is where, due to redlining, literally redlining, Black and brown folks were forced to live, right? A lot of other ethnic minorities moved north or south into Manhattan, north into the North Bronx, southeast into the boroughs of Queens and Brooklyn. And those boroughs also have a part of hip hop story, but hip hop's birth is in the South Bronx. And it's due to the South Bronx becoming what hip hop scholar Jeff Chang calls the politics of abandonment. And so let's dive deep into what it looked like, because I could talk about it, but I want to show you what it looks like. Oh, actually, before I get into what it looks like, here's the impacts of the Cross Bronx Expressway being built. Community displacement, community fragmentation, right? Like I said, lack of music programs. So what did the people do? They took it into their own hands and made a whole new music culture, right? Economic decline, businesses left, right? Property values went to the floor. Housing deterioration, you're going to see it in the next clip in real time. The South Bronx becomes synonymous with urban decay, the politics of abandonment, as scholar Jeff Chang says. And it's a cautionary tale of the social and economic consequences of large-scale urban development projects. I want you to pay attention to about a minute of this clip, and I'm going to ask you to shout out, because I don't have time to call people out individually, what you see once that minute is up. Here we go. Here's the Bronx in the 1970s. I like ending it right when he hits it with the stick, right? What do y'all see? Shout it out. Go ahead. Abandonment. Other thoughts?
Unsupervised youth.
Unsupervised youth. Keep it coming.
Poverty.
Creativity. Living life. Beautiful. My favorite thing, I'm gonna shout it out, is the second story broken window where the kids jumping out of. That's my favorite thing. And And this is unsupervised youth. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Let's keep it pushing, team. So here are our foundational players in this celebration. We're here celebrating halfway to a centennial. We have the date, August 11, 1970. This is an actual flyer from the party that started it off. I want to start up top in the upper left corner. That is our first lady of hip hop, Cindy Campbell. And it's important to talk about Cindy Campbell as fundamental to the story because all things begin with Black women, specifically hip hop, right? In this case, in this lecture, specifically hip hop. Cindy Campbell wanted to throw a back to school jam for her birthday. And she wanted to charge, because ain't nothing free in America. No, she wanted to charge because she wanted to get some back to school clothes, right? But she said, I don't want my party to be whack. And my brother is this revolutionary b-boy graffiti artist. He could also low-key knows how to do his thing on the record player. I want him to DJ my party. Now, this is important to talk about the DJ culture because what I'm referring to is, yes, DJ is in DJ hip hop, but I'm also referring to DJ, D-E-E-J-A-Y, as an Afro sport, but really Jamaican toasting tradition. And to those of you who don't know, in Jamaica, also in the villages of Jamaica, if you will, they set up large sound speaker systems and they have somebody on the mic and they're playing records obnoxiously. And there's a battle between this DJ, D-E-E-J-A-Y crew and that D-E-E-J-A-Y crew. And whoever has the louder sound speaker system wins, right? But they're toasting. And in between the record playing, they're shouting out what the record is. And you might have heard it if you listen to Jamaican music, Caribbean music. They're shouting out who's playing. They're saying rewind selector, all of these things, right? Well, Kool Herc and Cindy Campbell are Jamaican. They're Jamaican American. Campbell knows her brother possesses this Caribbean influence of the DJ style and says, hey, big bro, could you DJ my back to school jam? And that is the birth. This is what we're here talking about and celebrating today. So you see this flyer, you see 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. That is the recreation center in the South Bronx in a park where this existed, where this took place. You see, when I said, hey, where my ladies at? You see ladies were charged 25 cents. When I said, hey, where my fellas at? Fellas were charged 50 cents, right? Given by DJ Kool Herc, School is Out. Special guest, Coco, Cindy C, that's Cindy Campbell, Clark K, and Timmy T. This is the birth of hip hop as we know it. Let's continue the talk. I'm actually going to let this play and then I'll jump in with my notes.
Music you play made life. Cool DJ. Cool. Who's that? I'm that guy who set up all this mess, okay? From b-boys and dancing and making to groove on. That's it. Get you up and sit you down. Oh, this is my sister. She started me out, okay?
I'm the first hip hop promoter. My back to school party that I gave, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, August 11, 1973. That was the birth of hip hop. At the time, New York City was almost bankrupt. There was really nothing there for kids to do. When we started the party, it was different because you felt connected. You felt a part of it. Actually, I gave a party. Everybody be there. I didn't want my party to be whack, so I said, "Her, you give it a party and you're gonna play music." And he said, "Okay." Oh, I know. It's pretty good. Everybody showed up, had a good time. Wow. People heard music they never heard before.
I'm the brothers, Jimmy Pastor. Last night, debuted in Mexico. What I did, 2 records, extended records. Right now, our call is the merry-go-round.
If you look in the vinyl, and there's a heavy groove on there, that's when Herc said, "Oh, okay, that's the groove." And the B-boy, we just waited for that.
Yeah. Those are my timetables. That was it. You don't fight no more. This right here, this is the power. And also system cooled out at the same time. So you never overheated. We gave another way out. Because I remember I met Biggie, Kool Herc. Thanks for starting this hip hop. I blew out this stealing. He said, thank you, Herc, and I appreciate that. I wish I could play right now. Give you a little taste. There's three other people. There's white people, there's black people, it's brown people. And that's where you find me at.
Hip hop has done so much. It's a global genre of music. I would say to be that something that we did is positive, and we just want everybody, whoever, have an opportunity to have a piece of history to know this is where it came from, this is where it started, and it's just something that came out of love.
Kool Herc. Who's that? Who's that? It's who the first MCs. So that's what's up.
Hey, I love the piece that Cindy C says. It came out of love. It came out of the love for Big Brother, for his little sister. It came out of the love for people born into straight ruins, who love their community and wanted to give their community something positive and something good that they could feel on that day. So we have to, in the spirit of a bell hooks love ethic, we need to center love in hip hop. I already talked about a lot of these things, but I did want to bring note to bullet point 3, which is the fact that on November 3rd, 2023, literally 10 days ago, Kool Herc was inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Some people say here, I love from James Brown, baby you success, and also a lot of people, man.
Shouting out the pioneers, James Brown, who his drummer, Clyde Stubblefield, was one of the foundational samples on Funky Drummer. In the video clip on the top, they talked about how Kool Herc was really good at isolating the drum instrumentals on old vinyls and old records. He was able to move past the singing and find the instrumental because he knew that that's what the B-boys and the B-girls, the breakdancers, wanted to move to. And so he's shouting out James Brown because James Brown's Funky Drummer sample is foundational. Clyde Stubblefield's sample is foundational to the movement, right? And congratulations to Kool Herc for being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In his interview, he said it's about time, but Willie Nelson's 95 years old, and they just got to him last year. So me being in my 70s, it's okay. So I want to go more into the audio technology side, the innovations of these Black youth and what they're doing. So without me just talking about it, let's let them dive in.
That part right there, break, boom, that's coming with bomb rock. Bomb rock, but still no vocals in it. Now we're going to Baby Yui, the Mexican. And I'm like, whoa. I think we got some hit, people was like, oh, whoa. Everybody was like, yeah, I'm feeling this. Oh, yeah. The instrumental breaks on the records became known as the breakbeat, and Herc's merry-go-round formula of mixing between them provided the blueprint for a new music.
Oh man, Kool Herc was the first person I ever heard that do anything like that, Because I'm used to being in the house with my mother and we put a James Brown record on and just let it play through. Kool Herc would play the break part back and forth, and that really astonished me. I was really impressed when I seen that, something like that, because I'd never seen anything like that before.
I saw Kool Herc And I was 14 years old, and that very day when I saw his sound system and how loud it was and the records that he played would just change the way the party was going, that's what I wanted to do. Good.
So I want to introduce some of the tools to folks, right? Up top, we see the turntable, also known as the vinyl player. In its origin is just a standalone vinyl player. Hip hop made it the turntable, right? You see the boombox, which for a lot of early hip hop artists and practitioners, they would do something called dubbing, right? They would record breaks off the radio because I don't know, the young folks in the room, you might not know this, but you could record cassette on a boombox. One of those buttons right there is the record button, and you could record whatever's playing out of the speakers onto a cassette. You could go to the 99-cent store back when we had 99-cent stores in abundance, and you could buy like blank cassette tapes, and you could put it in the deck, hit record, find and isolate an instrumental. Then you would take a microphone, plug it into your 1/8-inch jack, right? And you can dub it, so then you could record over it and record over that instrumental you just recorded, and then you could start to record vocals over it. And for a lot of early hip hop practitioners, these were their tools. I bring this up because Black people are revolutionary in so many ways, but the folks who learned and innovated and figured out how to do this, we're literally working with minimal tools, right? We're not talking about a $100,000 mixing room that we have a couple feet away from us. We're talking about a boombox that you could get for under $100, if that, and cassette tapes that you could get for $1 or $2, and a microphone that you could buy at a thrift store for maybe $5 to $10, and you have yourself a recording studio. And even though you're in an apartment in the Bronx or in Brooklyn or in, Upper Manhattan, or even in Los Angeles, California, or Columbia, South Carolina, right? Folks are taking advantage of the means that they have. Clyde Woods, a Black studies scholar, calls it gumbo theory. You take the scraps you're given, but you make magic happen, right? And that is one of the tools. Turntable, obviously. The turntable is not just a standalone like platform to play music the way our grandparents listened to a record all the way through. The turntable is actually a musical instrument, just like the piano, right? You have actual technicians, people who study this craft of mastering when to pick up the needle, when to drop it, right? Mastering the revolution and timing the revolution. I use that word revolution because it's not just revolving, but it's also revolution, right? Mastering the revolution so that they could drop the needle right in the right groove at the right spot. I also use the word groove because it's not just the groove in the vinyl. Hip hop's full of metaphors, y'all. I could do this all day, but it's not just the groove in the wax, right? It's the actual groove of that 16-bar instrumental loop that keeps the crowd moving. And what DJ Kool Herc was able to pioneer was he would pick up the needle and then drop it right at the back of the top at the start of the groove. And he would talk in between picking up the needle, and he was actually the first DJ and the first MC at the same time. We have CDs. Some of the young folks in this room don't even know what that is either, right? But also innovation in audio technology allowed for both the cassette and the CD players, the Walkmans, if you will, allowed music to be portable. These were the first iPhones with Spotify or iTunes on it, right? Like the boombox, absolutely. And that was a public display, right? That allowed for the community to hear the music, right? Because music is meant to be shared. That's a fundamental part of hip hop praxis. I also want to show some of the tools that are used in hip hop music creation. You'll see like synthesizer keyboards, drum machines, and I'll talk more about it in the next slide. But these are some of the foundational tools. Once that starving hip hop practitioner saved up a couple $100s, they were able to elevate to something like this and be able to continue creating their music. So hip hop sampling, right? Sampling, technological revolution in musical creativity. I'm just gonna start naming them out: the Mellotron, the Chamberlain, the Fairlight CMI Series 2, the EMU emulator, the Roland S50, the Akai series, not just the MPC 60, but some of y'all know the MPC 2000, right? the Casio SK1, the SP1200, right? These are all, and as they came out, they just upped the bar one by one, right? But these are some examples of them here. I think that's a machine, which is a more newer drum machine, but these are called samplers. And why samplers are important is because originally created for like synth pop, rock and roll, different genres of music. The idea was that you would be able to plug in kind of stock drum sounds and then replay them in real time. But what hip hop pioneers and practitioners and early producers were able to figure out is you could record vinyl and then input vinyl sounds into here using floppy disk. Some of y'all might not know what that is either. Input the sounds using floppy disk, chop them up, resequence them, and then replay them using the drum machine. I don't have any videos showing you how to do that, but they could replay it using the drum machine and create alternate new loops, right? And it's about manipulating the way that Kool Herc, it's the same kind of theory. The way that Kool Herc was able to manipulate a record vinyl player, early hip hop producers were able to manipulate the Akai MPC, the SP1200. A lot of these tools weren't in the manufacturer's guide, weren't meant to be used how hip hop practitioners use them. They like innovated and freestyled it. I just left a talk with Hank Shockley. I think this is my next slide. Let me double check. Yeah, I just left a talk with Hank Shockley, who's a pioneering hip hop producer of Public Enemy. Here are two quotes that he said at his talk at the 2023 Audio Engineering Society Conference in New York City. He said, in the realm of music, rhythm and blues is about harmony. Hip hop is about dissonance. And it's not just dissonance in a musical term, but again, we're talking about literal revolution, right? Also, he says, in punk rock, they have distortion with guitars. With hip hop, we invented distortion with samplers and synthesizer keyboards. The idea was to make records from records. And what he was elaborating on was how he would like plug in a 1/4-inch cable. We have some in the room, but those are the cables that kind of go into your interface, your mixers. And he would say, in order to emulate, because he's like, I love Pink Floyd. So in order to emulate what Pink Floyd does, I would plug my 1/4-inch cable halfway into my Akai MPC. And so that it would cut off some of the frequencies when we press record. Because we didn't have, nowadays we got graphic visual equalizers. I'm getting real nerdy with the audio tech, y'all, but we got graphic equalizers where we can see the frequencies in real time. Back then, they were just going off of feel. And so he's like, well, I don't really like the high end on that. I want it to sound real subwoofery, right? So he just takes a 1/4-inch cable, kind of, messes with it, plugs it out halfway, and now you have this filtered sound, right? And so it's literal distortion that they're doing, but it's a technical distortion that I think doesn't get enough credit. Like nowadays, we can do it in our digital audio workspaces like easily, but back then it took a real pioneering spirit to do what they did. So yeah, Hank Shockley, 2013 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Crazy how he got in before Kool Herc, right? Grammy-nominated producer, DJ, sound designer, music executive, culture, evolver, maybe future speaker at Clemson U. I got his contact, so we'll see. Also, again, hip-hop foundationally is centered by Black women. So like the first record label was founded by Sylvia Robinson, who was a famous R&B singer in the 60s, 50s and 60s, and she took the money she was able to save from her successful music career. She knew that this thing was bubbling in the underground, and she said, you know what? I want to start a record label, and I want to put out a rap record. So the first ever rap record song released and record label, Sugar Hill Records, was founded by Sylvia Robinson, and that song is widely known as Rapper's Delight. I'm gonna play a snippet of this for you all so we can get the feel.
Here's Wonder Mike, Hank, and Master G, the Sugar Hill Gang. Now what you hear is not a test, I'm rapping to the beat. And me, the groove, and my friends are gonna try to get the beat. You see, I am Wonder Mike, and I like to say
I'm gonna talk over them in true MC fashion as it's playing in the background. So There's a couple things that I want to connote by bringing up Rappers Delight. This is 1979, 6 years after the famed Kool Herc party. This is the first released and commercially successful hip hop song, but it's argued that it's not hip hop, right? Because there's no sample. Do y'all hear a sample in this song? They are sampling effectively. It's Good Times by Sheik. Yes, Kaifa. It's Good Times by Sheik. And what this is Sylvia Robinson hires an R&B band to come in and cover Good Times, and and says, you know, we're gonna play the backbeat or the breakbeat of Good Times, if you will, but I want the Hank, the rapping pizza guy around the corner, and his two friends to come in and rap over it. So it's Good Times, but it's not Good Times. And it's argued that this is not, some people in circles will say that this is the ultimate demise of hip hop as a culture, right? Because this breaks through. You see who's dancing at the party. Is that black folk at the community center? No. This is the disco, right? And so the vibe is a little different. Yes, it breaks through. And I'm sure for a lot of people who were embedded in the culture at the time, they thought, finally, representation on the mainstream. This was televised. We're seeing black people rap and dance on television. But at the same time, some people, to that degree, were also upset that this thing that was deeply personal and deeply embedded in their community has now crossed over. And now it belongs to the world, right? So I want to bring that up to folks because something that we're going to continue talking about over the next 30 minutes or so, I got 20 minutes or so, is about the marketing and the commercialization of rap. Let's keep it pushing in the interest of time. I want to bring us to South Carolina. The first ever hip hop group signed to a record label, they were signed to Sugar Hill Records, was The Sequence. They established in 1979 in Columbia, South Carolina, after going to a Sugar Hill Gang concert that took place in South Carolina. Angie B, later known as Angie Stone, some of y'all may know who she is, right? Blondie and Cheryl Cook attended this conference and waited until the end of the conference to talk to Sylvia Robinson and the Sugar Hill Gang, and they said, we are like the female Sugar Hill Gang. We can rap, we know how to dance. And so effectively, they end up becoming the first female hip hop group ever signed to a record label. And well, they performed for Sugar Hill Gang, get recognized, become signed to Sugar Hill Records. And they have records like Funk You Up, Keep Their Heads Ringing, which have musical influence today. Keep Your Heads Ringing was effectively sampled by Dr. Dre. And then Funk You Up, they said in 2017, the Sequence filed federal copyright infringement on Bruno Mars for Uptown Funk for using the vernacular Funk You Up, right? Even though musically and sonically they're two different records. But important to know that South Carolina also is embedded in the roots. Specifically, South Carolinian Black women are embedded in the roots of hip hop as well. So let's talk about a new technological pioneer, Grandmaster Flash, building upon what DJ Kool Herc was able to innovate. So Flash invented what we know as the crossfader, which is now transitioned into mainstream culture. You see it in the mixing studios everywhere, but it also has gone into like EDM and electronic dance music. It's used anytime a DJ has a mixer between two turntables. Grandmaster Flash invented the crossfader, and his contributions are also the quick mix theory. So the way that Kool Herc worked in that first party was he would only work off one turntable, and he would use his method of picking up and dropping the needle and talking in between the space to keep the party going. Well, Grandmaster Flash, who I would say he moonlighted as an electrician because he's really a hip hop pioneer first, was able to, that's where he got the name Grandmaster Flash, by the way, but he was able to use his expertise in electricity and say, if I can create a current between two turntables, and he took a light switch, and I'm not an electrician, so I don't really know how he did it, but I know the story. He said, if I flip it this way, this turntable will play. And if I flip it this way, this turntable will play. And what that allowed for was for the party to never stop. So So now you take two vinyls with the same breakbeat, Clyde Stubblefield, James Brown, funky drummer. You isolate that breakbeat, right? You have that 16 bar loop playing on this one. It's about to end. He winds it up to the point at the top of the breakbeat, and as it's about to end on this turntable, switches it. And he does that back and forth for hours. And in between, that breakbeat goes through his crate, picks up another, lines it up with the BPM, puts it on, and then switches to a new song. And this is how the party was able to continue going without interruption. And it was a technological innovation that is mirrored today in digital audio workspaces as looping, right? As looping. So we have to honor Grandmaster Flash in this talk. Let's watch him work. Let's watch the master work. What you're seeing as he's manipulating the vinyl is called scratching. So with the invention of the crossfader, both could play at the same time. And if one is going, he can scratch the other one into position. But it also creates this sound, right? This sound that is revolutionary. This idea that I don't know how to explain it. Dang, I'm having a hard time explaining it. But y'all see it. That scratching sound is fundamentally part of hip hop, right? And it gets built upon. Grandmaster Flash innovates, and then further DJs innovate, like Filipino American DJ Qbert from the San Francisco Bay Area. Where scratching is now part of the vernacular of the song. It's now a rhythmic, it's almost at the equivalent of an MC rapping, scratching over the breakbeat, right? And DJ Qbert won the DJ Scratch competition, national scratch champion, like 11 years in a row. Let's keep it pushing. I'm gonna play a little bit of. So Grandmaster Flash was also an MC, and we have to talk about hip hop socio-political consciousness, right? We're not talking about commercial rap music. We're talking about, this is the early years, right? DJ Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five have things to say about the neighborhood they grow up in.
Going glass everywhere. People on the stage, you know they just don't care. I can't take the smell, can't take the noise. Got the money to move on. I guess I got no choice. Rats in the front room, bumpers in the back, junkies in the alley with a baseball bat. I tried to get away, but I couldn't get far, cause a man with the touch repossessed my car. Don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep going under. Standing on the front stoop, hanging out the window, watching all the cars by roaring as the breeze blow. Crazy lady living in a bag, eating out of garbage, used to be a fag hag.
What do y'all notice? What's he talking about? Shout it out. The neighborhood, poverty. I hear y'all. New York City, right? Rats and roaches, urine in the hall, right? And so making it beautiful, right? And as pioneering hip hop artist and Public Enemy, Chuck D says, hip hop was our version of CNN. That was our first way to understand, and for Black American youth to be able to voice what was occurring in the communities that they came from, right? So the message, quite literally the message that Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five are giving to the people of America and the world is, this is what's going on in our backyard. Rats and roaches and urine and homeless ladies on the corner eating out of trash cans, right? And they're showing it too. It's videotaped, so it's documented, right? And let's not get too political, but it's political, y'all. But in the most advanced country, right, quote unquote, in the world, this is going on in our cities, right? Let's keep it pushing. So I talked a little bit about Sylvia Robinson bringing hip hop to the mainstream. 1994 Common releases I Used to Love Her. I'm gonna play a little bit of it and then we can talk about it.
Yes, y'all, don't stop. Until the beat comes, let's beat the short shot. Come on, I met this girl when I was 2 years old. And what I love most, she had so much soul. She was old school, but I was just a shorty, never knew. Throughout my life, she would be there for me or the regular. Not a church girl, she was secular. Not about the money, no stuff was my checking her, but I respected her. She hit me in the heart. A few New York homies had dinner in the park. But she was there for me, and I was there for her. Pull out a chair for her, turn on the air for her, and just cool out. Cool out and listen to her. Sitting on home, wishing that I could do eventually if it was meant to be. And it would be because we related physically and mentally, and she was fun then. I'd be cute when she come around. Slim was fresh, Joe, when she was underground original. You know, I tap with a down sister. So I tell you, I miss her. Yes, y'all, and you don't stop.
So he's reminiscing over his childhood version of hip hop that he knew. I met this girl when I was 10 years old, and what I love most, she has so much soul. And he's talking about how as hip hop becomes mainstream culture, the essence in the music fades away, right? And this narrative twist at the end of this song is you think he's talking about a woman or a love interest, but at the very end you realize he's talking about hip hop. And there's a feud that starts with Ice Cube and the Lynch Mob based on this record because in the second verse, Common talks about hip hop breaking to the West Coast and how once hip hop reaches LA from the East Coast, specifically New York, now the industry is involved. Now Hollywood is involved. Now the record labels are involved, and it changes the dynamic of how hip hop is to be received by the public. He faces backlash from West Coast MCs who stand on theirs like, nah, we do this hip hop stuff too, man. And there's a beef, right? And because of it, Cube drops No Vaseline, one of the most legendary hip hop diss records of all time, and then Common responds with The Bitch in You, right? So it's also important to talk about that too. I'm kind of fast forwarding here through like decades, right? But let's keep it pushing. So what I'm bringing your attention to is the business of hip hop from the Bronx to global markets, right? Hip hop now is this multi-billion-dollar industry and has given birth to numerous Black male billionaires, right? And it's important to think about that over the past 50 years, it has evolved from something that literally was innocent, started out as kids in the park trying to celebrate peace, love, unity, and having fun, and using the core elements, the core 4 elements of MCing, DJing, graph writing, and b-boying, b-girling as a way to live out those pillars and those principles. And now it's a for-profit game, right? Now it doesn't exist in those intimate spaces anymore. Now hip hop is commodified, right? And there's a negotiation that goes on between every real hip hop fan. I see some of y'all nodding in this room. Like, at what point does the soul of it, has it died? And at what point are we now just churning the wheels of this capitalistic engine that can't be turned off, right? At what point do we I began with the roots because the roots are important to talk about, right? It's important to remember where hip hop came from, how small of a place it came from, and now, now hip hop is the head of fashion house Louis Vuitton, right? Former fashion house head, rest in peace, Virgil Abloh, right? Like, we have to think about those things, right? Let's take a look at hip hop in the 2000s and 2010s. I'm gonna play a couple snippets.
How we link up, we done did everything they could think of. Greatness is what we wanna bring up. That I could have this moment to life, this moment
So Nicki Minaj reached 100 million in sales by the end of 2019. And kudos to her. I'm actually a fan of Nicki's lyrical prowess and what she stands for as a femc. But also this is a denoting like the mainstream relevancy of hip hop now, to even be able to reach 100 million in sales at the end of the 2010s. It's astonishing, it's beautiful, and it's also scary, right? To know that where it came from. I want to also play a snippet from here.
Right.
And regardless of how you feel about Soulja Boy, most people know this song, right? He's 16 when he releases this song in 2007. He received criticism for promoting negative stereotypes associated with black men in hip hop and not being articulate, for whatever that's worth, right? But he's also a pioneer. He knew how to market the internet and was foreshadowing market trends of internet marketing before that was a thing. He went viral before going viral was a thing. And this dance is a huge part of that, right? And it's still hip hop. It's still revolutionary for what he was able to do with limited resources. He took this. This dance is performed all over the world. I'm sure y'all have heard this at Clemson football games and of the sort. And I want to bring your attention to, last but not least, Nipsey Hussle from my hometown of Los Angeles, California. Also a revolutionary in so many ways. Rest in peace. He passed away in 2019. But he stood for so much that I identify with. Black economic empowerment, Afrocentricity in your business model, giving back to the community we come from. His independent mindset and Proud to Pay campaign were revolutionary. So the song that I'm playing for you is called Crenshaw and Slauson. It's the last song on his mixtape, Crenshaw, which is an ode and homage to his neighborhood in the Crenshaw district of Los Angeles. He pressed up 1,000 copies of this mixtape and sold it for $100 each, without being signed to a record label at the time. And he sold out. Jay-Z bought 100 copies. He ACH transferred Nipsey Hussle $10,000, and a lot of people supported Nipsey. A lot of people thought Nipsey was crazy too, but Nipsey said, literally, excuse my French, he said, "Fuck the middleman." You know, why would I give my money to what is most likely to be a white label executive male when me as a black label executive male who's creating the music and own my own masters and own my own publishing, own my recording studio. He was what he called vertically integrated. He also owned his merch line. He owned, not only did he own that clothing line, he owned the brick and mortar storefront that they sold it out of. He owned the actual lot. So he believed in black ownership, and he was a pillar of black financial economic literacy. And I'm so proud of him, even though he's passed on. I got to witness his like meteoric rise as in the periphery of him, like working in Los Angeles recording studios growing up. And he's somebody I look forward to, and his praxis is definitely embedded in why I earned my Ph.D. and why I'm here teaching you all this stuff, right? So I bring Nipsey to the forefront because he's also a disruptor, and rest in peace, even in his death is still disrupting. So yeah, hip hop in the 2000s, 2010s, lots of disruptors, right? Here are the richest rappers according to Forbes in 2022. Jay-Z, and mind you, these valuations have gone up since then for a lot of them, and some of them have gone down. Jay-Z, 1.5 billion. Diddy, 1 billion. Ye, also known as Kanye West, aka Yeezy, 500 million. Burner, 410 million. Burner actually doesn't make his money in rap music. He makes his money in marijuana. He owns a cultivation business called Cookies. Some of you might have seen it, which is also vertically integrated because not only does he own the marijuana like itself, like the product, but he also owns the clothing line associated with it. He owns the brick and mortar storefronts that they sell both the merch, all of the merch out of. And so he's worth 410 million. He's in the top corner. And then Dr. Dre, 400 million. So let's foster critical consciousness. Let's navigate between culture and capitalism, right? I'm gonna let Trisha Rose. She's popular for writing the first book on hip hop, Ph.D. from Brown University, current lauded professor at Brown University. Shout out to Dr. Swells in the room. But Let's play her take on this.
Well, actually, I'm going to answer a slightly different question because I don't think the women on this panel should be relegated only to women's issues, and it would be the second gender-based. I'd love to hear all the men on that, but let me first say, there's no question that commercial mainstream American hip hop not only responds to a legacy of violence against Black people, but it also exacerbates and glorifies it. Commercial mainstream American hip hop. This conversation has acted as if hip hop is one thing or another, an entire monolith. And by ignoring the extraordinary commercial penetration of hip hop, and I use that word advisedly, what we've allowed to happen is to render meaningful criticism of the commercial takeover of a Black cultural form designed not only to liberate, but to create critical consciousness, and turned it into the cultural arm of predatory capitalism in the last 30 years.
She's not done.
And so I love hip hop so much, I must speak the truth about the demise of the spirit of hip hop insofar as it has been taken over by these ideas, so much so that this young gentleman here thinks that this is funny, right? That calling Black women bitches is funny. And we egged him on with your laughter. So I'd like you all to ask yourselves why you thought that was so funny. Exactly.
All right. Revolutionary, right? She wrote Black Noise, published in 1993. The influential book on hip hop, cited in academia all over. If you want her take on hip hop as of 1993, because she also wrote the Hip Hop Wars in 2000, published in 2008, and that has a more updated take. But if you want a take on hip hop from someone from New York in the moment, Black Noise, big recommend on all my syllabi. So definitely important read. But again, hip hop is a culture, right? But rap music is a commercial product, and we have to be able, I'm gonna get real churchy, y'all, but we have to exercise discernment, right? We got to be able to differentiate the two. Hip hop is a culture, which I've spent the better part of the last hour outlining for you, has its own principles and foundations and pillars. Rap music as a commercial product is a commercial product driven by industry, right? And we have to be able to separate the two. Now, are there elements of hip hop still in rap music today? Absolutely. I'll be listening to Doja Cat and Kendrick and Drake, and I still hear pieces of it. I still hear it, specifically in Kendrick, but I still hear pieces of it, right? The spirit of hip hop is still alive, but we must listen to it through the lens of knowing that it's also being sold to us now at this point. It's no longer something that we can access from a communal standpoint. Even though we can access it from a communal standpoint, it's now marketed towards us. And the lyrics are also marketed towards us. And the look is also marketed towards us, right? You know, chains, even though I got one on, and and BBLs and all that stuff, it's all marketed towards us, right? Yeah. Let's move forward. I'm almost done, y'all. Can y'all give me like 5 more minutes? Yeah. All right, cool.
In August 1973, a young Jamaican-born New Yorker known as DJ Kool Herc threw a party in the South Bronx. A pair of turntables. He improvised a technique that isolated and repeated musical breaks That technique would lay the foundation for a genre known as hip-hop.
A culture known as hip-hop. No dash, by the way.
Emerged from house parties in the Bronx and spread like wildfire between friends and neighbors at block parties. The new sound was electrifying.
In the schoolyard during recess, someone would have a boombox. So then someone would start rhyming. You didn't have recorded versions of hip hop at that time.
Within a few years, it had become an underground cultural movement, and its distribution was homemade. You couldn't purchase albums or records, and you couldn't hear hip hop on the radio. The only way that you could participate in the culture musically was through these cassette tapes, which would circulate all throughout the city. As its influence deepened and broadened, the music spread from the underground onto the radio. In 1979, a group from suburban New Jersey released Rappers Delight, one of the first hip-hop records.
Now what you hear is not a test of running to the beat. And me, the crew, and my friends are gonna try to get their feet.
And the Sugar Hill Gang's hit was just the beginning. As hip hop evolved, it became a passion shared by millions of young Americans who used it to articulate their identity and their politics, creating a vibrant, multicultural community across the country.
Our generation of young people, we had to find new ways to communicate, just getting on the records and speaking about the truth.
Its lyrics reflected the social and economic conditions of the inner cities, as seen through the eyes of the people who live there.
Call, close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. Say what? It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep going.
I think it was Chuck D who said, CNN in the Black community is actually reporting on all of these things that we've experienced in poetry form and musical form.
In 2017, hip hop surpassed rock as America's #1 stream genre for the first time ever. Decades after its birth, hip hop has grown from its underground origins in the Bronx to become one of the most popular genres of music throughout the world.
All right.
In all
So, to me, hip hop is epistemology. It's a knowledge source. It's pedagogy. It's a teaching tool. I teach it in all my classes. Whether we're talking about the practical audio tech side, we're talking about the theoretical global Black foundations in the global Black studies courses here at Clemson. And I want to play a snippet of when I was signed to a record deal and I was a young burgeoning hip hop. I still make music, by the way. That's part of the prerequisite for me getting hired here was like, do you still make music? I was like, absolutely. We labbing up right after this, right, El? Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna play the second verse from my lead single, "What We Do," off of my debut mixtape, "Love Overcomes," and I want you to listen to what I'm saying.
You do. Big taught me the 10 commandments. Pop told me you can lie from the truth. Jay taught me how to market this rap game. Wayne teaches that it starts as a youth. Nas taught me that life is a beach. Ye taught me that it all falls down. M taught me it don't matter what you look like. Tay taught me criminals wear crowns. Soldier taught me all I need was a date. Drake taught me all I need is a chase. Three stacks taught me how to stand it out. Lauren Hill taught me how to be a maid. Getting rich gives me hope for the future. J. Cole gives me hope for the now. Comments taught me how to be faithful. Motherfucker taught me how to be loud. Little B taught me how to be different. Chuck D taught me how to be proud. Rich Mark taught me how to be just a friend. Kid Cudi taught me how to stay south. Snoop Dogg taught me how to smoke lazy. Dr. Dre taught me how to be Westside. Luke Day taught me how to be pushed. Aaliyah taught me something from the best night. Pharrell changed the sound of my music. Only at the tempo changed the verse. Leslie taught me that country grammar. Luda made sure the peace disturbs. 50 taught me that hustle was everything. Fat Joe made me ask what's love. Rick Ross taught me how to live that boss life. Big Dog sang songs for the thugs. Game taught me how to stand for myself. Quality taught me how to get by. Baby taught me to real wealth. Most death taught me wealth of the mind. Tri-Quest made me want to see a leader. Daylight made me want to have soul. Mickey showed me black girl Barbie. Fonte taught me wisdom is gold. Hip hop taught me more about life. Hip hop taught me more about life. Hip hop taught me more about life than anything ever could. Hip hop taught me more about life. Hip hop taught me more about life. Hip hop taught me more about life than anything ever could.
Man, wake your ass up and get back to work.
Alright, sir. I'm on it right now.
These are my references for those interested, and I'm happy to share this with folks. That's what pedagogy, that's what scholarship's all about. So if y'all have any questions about what I'm citing in here, what I'm talking about, feel free to email me. I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love hip hop. This was truly a labor of love for me. If I wasn't a professor of hip hop, I would be in a studio making hip hop records right now. So, and we're going to do that right after. So, I say that to say, are there any questions, comments, feedback? And if you feel free to engage with me. When did you first fall in love with hip hop?
I can say, let's do this for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to take the conversation to the hallway and eat.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody. And please introduce yourself, because I want to know who's here. So, like, who's in the house? Say your name, your title, if you have one or not. Yes.
Okay, first record, Rappers to Life, but the one that hooked me was like.
Yes. 2 records we played today. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you, Kendra. Other thoughts? Yes.
I would say that I listen to
Yeah. I feel terrible for not putting Queen Latifah in the slideshow. I know, right? Come on, Melvin. I hear you. Thank you. Yes. DMX, and then, okay, stepdad's a DJ. What would he play? Anything, everything, right? Okay, cool. Other thoughts? Right here. Yeah, yes, Dr. Swales.
Yonder Swales, professor of African American history and global black studies. So I guess to answer your question, start with fell in love with hip hop. 98, Tupac, greatest hits. Track 1, Troublesome 96, first song I ever knew by heart.
Let's go.
Part of that though was having a mom who was part of the hip hop generation. So my mom was born in '73, grew up on it. You know, West Coast hip hop developed at a different time. So that's all like her generation: Tupac, Ice Cube, whatever. So I was kind of born into it. That was like the normal music, still is basically. But I had a question.
Yes.
I just want to hear your thoughts on this, especially given like seeing everything on the timeline up front. So my question is, going back to that slide with Nicki Minaj, Soulja Boy, and
Nipsey? Yes.
It's interesting because if I'm just looking at this in a vacuum, not as a scholar who, you know, background knowledge, whatever, it's interesting because from the start to the finish, if I had to argue which one of those 3 actually represented hip hop in its purest form, Soulja Boy actually looks like it.
Right.
You know what I mean? The fun, the flair, like he's not dangerous, or at least at that point he wasn't. Going off the rails a bit. But,
Drake. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But I guess I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. Like, what does that say about the progression of hip hop now, especially given that, like, when we think about commercial, quote unquote, commercialized hip hop, people would say, like, maybe Will Smith, when he was rapping, that's commercialized, sanitized, whatever. But in reality, it actually looks very much like the most purest form of hip hop, MC, DJ, party music. And so, what does that say about the progression of hip hop that, like, honestly, when Soulja Boy was out, that's not even that far removed from hip hop. Like, we're only like 30 years in at that
30 years, yeah.
And only maybe 25 or so on the national stage. Doesn't mean that quickly people have already forgotten like what the purest forms are. We'll kind of highlight different things as authentic, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. You threw a lot at me because like cultural authenticity when it comes to specifically, I mean, it works in both ways with like male MCs and then also like women MCs. But I would argue, or I would speak to like what we consider relevant. I say we because I'm a practitioner, but also like a part of this culture too is like nowadays it would be like the gangster, right? Somebody who can handle himself in quote unquote the street environment. That is a part of the cultural authenticity of what makes an MC now is like, but do you got street cred, right? But like to the point that you're making, like Soulja Boy, you talk about danger, right? Soulja Boy in that iteration of his career is really just having fun. I'm just speaking on the notes you're throwing at me. So the thought that I have in response to you is like this interesting point that we're in right now where specifically mainstream hip hop in 2023, a lot of what's being sold is like inherently violent. And it's like it's all about how many bodies you can catch, right? To those of you who don't know like what that phrasing is, like a body is a let's say a murder on your record, right? Like I caught 100 bodies last year could be a lyric from somebody who's out right now, right? And so there's this interesting kind of like divide from the original place of where it comes from, which is peace, love, unity, and having fun. And a lot of this, I believe, is derived from the market, right? Trisha Rose said it way better than I will ever be able to, that the market breeds violence in hip hop, in commercial rap music. people love, there's like a popular colloquial saying, like, people love black people until it's time to be black. I will also argue that people, like, in general, this isn't just a black specific thing, people also love violence, like the way that violence is consumed on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter in so many different ways, right? We could talk about like literal bloody violence, but we could also talk about microaggressive violence, or the way violence is consumed. Like, it shows that there's a human kind of need for it. And now what is selling, and I guess what has sold since the 90s, or since NWA, if you will, has been this violent iteration of rap music. And I'm not gonna lie, I like it, some of it, right? Like, I'm also from South Los Angeles, right? So uh I also listen to that music with a discerning ear, because am I out killing anybody? Absolutely not. I'm a professor at Clemson University, right? I got morals and ethics and standards, but I can also like relate and understand, as somebody who grew up in black and brown Los Angeles, that like I understand what Nipsey Hussle's talking about in his records, right? But I think I'm really being really long-winded. I think we have to exercise discernment. That's just my biggest thing. Is like we have to be careful on what we consume, but also like recognize when we hear the spirit of original hip hop, or the foundational pillars of hip hop come back in certain new forms, to celebrate those forms, right? The ones that are riffing on where it comes from. But also, hip hop is allowed to innovate. It's allowed to move and to grow. I don't want to like give my opinion necessarily on like, I mean, fuck it, I'm gonna give my opinion. So like, I have a lover's quarrel with hip hop, because I don't necessarily love what it has grown into, but I can also see like how it has grown there. I talk about this a lot in class with one of my students who's in the house tonight, and he talks about like, do we have a need for black billionaires, right? Like what good does that do for the black community? Are we ending like homelessness, and are we ending hunger? Are we, what good is hoarding all this wealth that you've been able to amass from a culture that was meant to be for the people, by the people, right? And so I don't love necessarily where it's gone, but I could also see how it's gone there and why it's gone there. And I don't have like a definitive answer to your question, but I'm throwing these ideas out because this is a negotiation that is presently day going on right now. People are trying to figure out, like, I know people from your mother's era who be like, I can't listen to that stuff anymore, because they've outgrown it. They've outgrown where it's gone, right? And so, yeah, it's a tough one, but I hear you. Thank you. Other thoughts, folks? Yes.
Hey, I'm Brian, and first fell in love with hip hop when LL said I'm bad.
Hey.
And I want to know if you can talk a little bit more about this idea that originally the DJ was more important than the rapper.
Absolutely.
But now that it's become commercialized, we've shifted focus on the rapper as opposed to.
Well, thank you, Brian. I hope that, as illustrated in the talk, we're nothing without the DJ. The DJ is the person before the internet, right? Oh my gosh. Before the internet existed, the DJ was responsible for going to the vinyl store and crate digging and finding the song with the breakbeat, or having interior knowledge of like, yo, my mom and dad listened to this record in 1965 when I was 3 years old, and I know there's a breakbeat on that record somewhere. I have to go to the store and find it. Hip hop is inherently nerdy. Let me put that out there. This is nerd culture. The way that people get wrapped up in Marvel or cosplay or whatever is the same type of intention that one must put into learning the technique of hip hop practitionership, right? So before the internet, the DJ it was the backbone. You don't have an MC without the DJ, right? Because if it's just the MC, it's just me rapping up here with no music, right? No groove, no feel, just my voice, right? And what's the fun in that? The DJ is foundational. It's the foundational pillar. And I think this divide has happened because the DJ MC dynamic doesn't translate to the market. In the market, it's now a producer rapper dynamic, right? And producers historically have not gotten their shine in hip hop music. They've always been the kind of nerdy mad scientist that's in the studio, while the frontward facing, public facing figure is the MC, right? And because you hear the MC's voice, you think that the MC is responsible, unless like they're a producer MC like Kanye West or, J. Cole's of the world. Yes. So But for the most part, some people specialize. It's either you just MC and you just produce. And that translation had gotten lost in the marketization of hip hop. And so I would say from the late 80s onward, it is now, the producer is just a liner note on an album credit. They're not as important as the actual face, the physical manifestation of what you're hearing. The Eazy-E's, the Dr. Dre's, the Nas's and the Jay-Z's, the Queen Latifah's and the MC Lights. It's more like the MC is now the forefront, and the DJ or the person who's providing that looped backbeat is now an afterthought. And it's unfortunate. That's my take on it. If you want my opinion, that's unfortunate. Producers need love and DJs need love. Just like Michaela was DJing before I got up here, like the party don't move. In 2023, with the internet, the party still doesn't move without the DJ. You need a DJ. So big up your DJ. When you see somebody queuing up records on a Spotify or iTunes, or you see someone actually working with vinyl, always pay your respects to the DJ. You got to toast to the DJ because the party doesn't go on without the DJ. Other thoughts? Yes, Malcolm. I mean, in so many ways. Nipsey Hussle is an example of it. A lot of the early hip hop, I would not say early, but 1990s hip hop artists, a lot of them signed messed up publishing deals and record deals, but there is a small percentage of them who are able to negotiate for 100% of their mastering and publishing royalties, right? So they own their masters and they own their publishing. And that in itself, I teach an article by one of my colleagues and friends, Dr. Demarie Smith, professor of communications at San Diego State University. He talks about the Afrocentric economic empowerment of artists like Jay-Z, even though he's a capitalist and y'all might feel some type of way about him, or even Master P, who I found out Master P owns the biggest house in Los Angeles, estimated at 900 something, or I'm sorry, 92 million, something crazy like that, right? Master P also negotiated for his masters in publishing. Jay-Z built his own record label from the ground up, owning his own masters in publishing. Nipsey Hussle owned his own masters in publishing. And upon his death, was able to, in his estate, in the dividing up of his estate after his death, was able to give his children pieces of his royalties. In addition to that, hip hop has an entrepreneurial spirit. A lot of these artists create their own clothing lines. They invest in real estate. So the brick and mortar storefronts that they're selling stuff out of, they eventually hustle up enough money that they can purchase the real estate, the land that they're selling out of, right? And real estate is a big thing, right? Because it's important, it is totally American greed, right? The concept of real estate, specifically after we land acknowledged, and like we're thinking about like land back as a political rhetoric for indigenous sovereignty, right? But real estate, if you're looking at it from a hip hop perspective, is important. Like Jay-Z and Master P, Nipsey Hussle, a lot of artists preach about owning land and the importance of it, specifically for Black people who have never owned land. Not never, but historically speaking, right? Like this is not an Africana Studies 101 class, right? But like the history of how Black Americans came to this country, when you hear these men talk about land ownership in their records and real estate and economic empowerment by ownership, right? It is embedded in what they stand for and what they're preaching in the music. Yeah.
And I'm about to close this party down. We'll turn the music on. I'm from 1962.